I've been paranormal investigating for about 15 years now. Not cryptid investigating, but paranormal investigations. Going out, trying to find demons, monsters, haunted places, abandoned buildings. I didn't really understand the concept of cryptids until I spent time down in Louisiana, north of Ruston. And in this case, I wasn't even doing an investigation. I went to visit my in-laws. Now, let me say this about my father-in-law before I get started in this story. My father-in-law is old school. He doesn't use any woke language. He doesn't bite his tongue. He just calls things what they are. So I want to prepare you ahead of time for some of the things that I'm going to say that he said so you won't be offended. Quite frankly, if you do get offended, I don't give a damn. But nonetheless, we head on over to their house, and as soon as we pull up in the driveway, he looks at me and says, "Boy, you done gained about 40 pounds. Like I told you, the man does not bite his tongue. We head inside our house. My mother-in-law, Mary, has lemonade fixed. We sit down at the table. We're drinking lemonade. And he immediately starts to question me. So how's your job going? Are you still doing that paranormal investigation stuff on the side? Chasing after those ghosts and those demons? Don't bring none of that stuff in my house. We worship Jesus in this house. Don't have none of that foolishness in my house. Do we understand?" And I tell him, "Yes, sir, I understand. I wouldn't imagine doing anything like that in your household." He says, "Good." That conversation takes a hard turn right and goes into my job, asking me how things are going on my job. And frankly, I spend the first 3 hours being interrogated by my father-in-law. And I'm not talking about a nice interrogation. We're talking about one of those interrogations where they ask you questions and make you feel stupid at the same time. But I understand him. I've known him for a long time. And more than anything, he's concerned about the welfare of his daughter. Pause right here. Stop. Let me rewind and explain to you why he and I are not exactly on the same page. Now, when I met my wife, she was working as a nurse in the hospital where I found myself sick. And you know what they say about men in hospitals and nurses. When you find yourself in a vulnerable state and a woman is there to take care of you, really take care of you, it's pretty easy to fall in love. Women who are listening to the story, if you're a nurse, you experience this all the time. A guy falls for you while you're taking care of him, but you have absolutely no interest in him whatsoever. Well, in this case, I fell for my wife, but she actually did have interest in me. So once I was out of the hospital, over the next couple of months, I would just drop in, bring her flowers, bring her candy, offer to take her to lunch. And finally, we started dating. Well, I got offered a job down in Houston, and my then girlfriend, my now wife, decided she was going to leave Shreveport and stop being close to her family and move to Houston, but she didn't explain to her father exactly why she took the job. He found out on the back end that his daughter left following after me, going to Houston, and he just didn't like it. Frankly, and truthfully, I wouldn't have liked it either because the man had never met me. But nonetheless, this is how he and I got off on the wrong foot. And I tell you, it took a long time for me and him to get on the same page. And now back to the story. They own 18 acres of land, a little bit north of Ruston, Louisiana. And every time I go visit him, he has a job for me to do on this land. This particular time, he wanted to fix the fence. So the following morning, he wakes me up at 5 a.m. He says, "Come on out here and help me fix this fence." No, we're talking about a real country fence. Poles and barbed wire. And so now it's the two of us on his side by side, riding out to the edge of his property. And when we get to his fence line, it literally looks like something picked up one of the fence poles and walked away with it. I've never seen anything like this whatsoever. Something picked up the fence pole, the metal pole with the barbed wire on it, and just decided to walk back into the woods with it, dragging all of the rest of the poles with it. And so I'm standing there looking at this, and I'm like, "Pops, I'm not really sure what's going on, but how did this end up like this?" His reply was simple. "I'm not sure either, but all I know is I want my fixed fence, so let's get it done and let's get out of here." Imagine a scene. We're back in those woods, pulling that fence post and that barbed wire back to its original place. And every time we start to pull, it catches debris and sticks, and now we got to work our way in different directions. So now I make a suggestion. I say, "Listen, Pops, how about we just find the poles, cut the barbed wire, bring them, reset them, and run the barbed wire again?" He looks at me and says, "Well, son, I guess you're smarter than what you look. Let's do it your way." So now imagine a scene, the two of us are back off in the woods, away from his cleared land, cutting the barbed wire and collecting different poles, when we hear this howling sound. And it's hard for me to describe to you exactly what it sounded like, because frankly, I had never heard anything like this before. It seemed like it was a mixture of an animal and a woman scream. Started off like in this animalistic nature and then converted in the middle to sounding like a woman screaming, then converted again into sounding like an animal. We're talking about a howl that lasted about 16 seconds. Now my father-in-law is standing there looking around the woods, and then he says, "Drop all this, it's time for us to go." And I need you to understand something. I never seen this man afraid. I don't think I've ever seen this man worried. He was the coolest, most calm individual I ever met. But in that moment, something scared him, because his exact words was, "Drop all of this, we need to go." So now we hop in the side-by-side and take off, speeding out of there. And when I tell you we're speeding, we're flying out of there. Moving so fast that at any point in time we hit the wrong bump with the wheel turned in the wrong direction that frankly we would flip over. But he's pushing it. We get back to the house, go into the back door, and he walks straight into the bedroom, comes back out with rifles, and says, "Let's go back." Now stop right here in the story. Let me say this to you. Now I find myself completely and totally confused, because a few minutes ago there was something making noise in the woods that scared you so much that you ran. But you ran to get the rifle so we can go back. So I'm trying to slow him down. I say, "Listen." So now I'm trying to slow him down. I say, "Listen, hold on. What's out there in the woods that we needed to come back and get a rifle?" Now, I'm a Louisiana boy. I know what's out there in the woods. So I said, "Was that a pack of coyotes? Was it wolves? What do you think it was?" That's when he looks at me and he says, "Listen, son, we got two options. We can wait for that thing to come up to the house tonight and harass us, or we can go back to where we were and we can confront it back there and let it know that it should not bring its ass on this property." Now, mind you, he didn't tell me what quote unquote this thing was. He just laid out the two choices for me. Both choices seemed pretty freaking bad. So now we're back on the side-by-side, speeding at the same rate, headed right back to the same spot, except for when we get there, his crazy ass drives straight into the woods and does not stop driving. Are you listening to me? He's driving deeper into the woods, dodging trees, and he says, "I need to get its attention so they'll know we're here." Listen, we drive about 100, 200 yards into them woods, and I'm talking about dodging and swerving around trees, and he stops, gets off the side-by-side, and starts screaming and yelling, "Hey, I'm over here. I'm over here. I'm over here." Now, pause, stop right here. Let me catch my breath and let me say this. Part of me thought that he had lost his mind. I'm being honest with you. Matter of fact, the entire time I've been married to my wife, I've thought that my father-in-law was crazy. I mean, he just comes across as being crazy. But in this particular situation, in this moment, I thought this man had really lost his mind. But boy, was I wrong. In fact, I was wrong about this scenario more than I ever been wrong about anything in my life, because as he's there screaming, you hear it coming. Now again, I'm going to preference this with this so you'll understand. I am a paranormal investigator. It's not what I do for a living, because you don't make money doing it. But it is my hobby. And I have hours upon hours upon hours in the field doing paranormal investigations. So I know what a ghost sounds like when it runs. I have a damn good ear for sound. It's a huge part of being a paranormal investigator. But let me tell you this, so you can clearly understand me, that what I heard running at us did not sound like anything that belonged in the woods. Did not sound like anything that belonged in the woods whatsoever. Because it sounded like a damn giant running at us. You hear boom, 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 crack, boom, crack, crack, boom, crack, boom, crack, boom, crack. That cracking sound is tree limbs breaking as this thing is running in our direction. And when you look directly north, you see trees shaking and moving. And my father-in-law positions himself on the other side of the side-by-side, gets down on one knee, and starts to take aim. I'm on the opposite side of the side-by-side, which is closer to where this thing is coming. And he says, boy, you might want to bring your ass over here and get ready to shoot. Now, what I'm about to describe to you right now, you ain't going to believe it. And I'm fine with you not believing it, because I didn't believe it when I saw this shit. I honestly didn't. I thought that I was losing my mind. Because I come around on the other side of that side-by-side, I kneel down, and I'm starting to take aim. When I tell you this thing was 16 feet tall and it looked like one of the trees was moving in our direction, that's what this Dogman looked like. Now, listen, I understand if you're sitting there saying to yourself, you're exaggerating. There's no way this thing was 16 feet tall. All right, I give or take 2 feet, 14 feet tall. But it wasn't no less than 14 feet tall. And it's moving fast. And then it comes to a screeching halt standing next to a tree. And I'm talking about a screeching halt. You see the leaf litter flying up into the air. And my father-in-law starts shooting. Pop, 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 pop. I mean, he unleashes on this thing. And you know how in the Superman movies, Superman just moves out of the way and a bullet goes past him? Well, let me tell you something. It had to see them bullets coming, because it just moved slightly to the right and those bullets hit the tree behind it. And next thing you know, it's circling around us. Not circling around us like it's going to come in on us. It's just running in circles around us. Are you listening to me? Are you listening to me? Everybody want to hear Dogman's story. I'm telling you my story. Are you listening? This thing starts running in circles around us. And you may be asking yourself, well, how do you know that it was running in circles? Because you see the leaf litter kicking up in circles as it's running around. Then it stops in the exact same position, and then it stops in the exact same spot where it was. And my father-in-law starts shooting again. Boom, 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 boom. Runs out of bullets, takes the rifle from my hand, and starts shooting that one. Boom, 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 boom. When I tell you this was the most craziest that I've ever experienced, this was insane. As my father-in-law is shooting, it's moving back and forth, and then it starts to circle us again. Now, pause right here and let me say this to you. Now, at first I thought my father-in-law was crazy, but this day we bonded together, and I really grew to respect this man. Because as it's moving, he's saying, son, lay down on the ground, is trying to get me to shoot you. Are you listening to me? So now I'm laying on the ground and he's turning, trying to place a bullet on this thing as it's running around in circles. And then it takes off back in the direction that it came. Listen to me when I say this to you about cryptids. I have my own paranormal YouTube channel where I ghost hunt. I do all kinds of stuff. But there's no way in hell that I ever consider being a cryptid hunter. Because the level of intelligence and tactics that this thing showed was absolutely terrifying. And you got to understand, I didn't comprehend it all until we made it back home. We're sitting at the table, drinking coffee, when he said, son, I don't know if you really understand what it was doing. It realized that the two of us had rifles, and it started circling us to make us not only waste ammunition, but to crossfire at each other. Now, I don't know if you was afraid to shoot or what was going on with your son, but the reason why we're still alive right now is because you never took a shot. It realized that after I took the rifle from you and started shooting, that we had more bullets left, and that's why it went away. Now, listen, I'm not Dogman. I don't think for Dogman. I'm not inside of their mind. But according to my father-in-law, who's dealt with these things multiple times, that's exactly how they think. And to me, that's some terrifying, man,